She had ordered men buried for less. But when she looked into his eyes, calm, unafraid, and heartbreakingly innocent, Elsie Moreau realized something far more dangerous than a bullet had just entered her world. The night Elsie Moreau walked into Seoul's Grand Mirai Hotel, 3 men outside stopped breathing, not from death, but from fear. She had that effect. 34 years old, half French, half Nigerian, with a jaw sharp enough to cut glass and eyes that had seen things no courtroom would ever hear about. She wore a charcoal suit, no jewelry except one thin scar above her left brow, and the particular stillness of a woman who had never once been told no and survived to repeat the mistake. She ran the Moreau Syndicate, 13 countries, 4 continents, and a reputation that made Interpol nervous at dinner parties. Tonight's job was clean, surgical. A man named Cho had been skimming from her Seoul operations. 40 million won, redirected through ghost accounts she hadn't authorized. Her people had traced the theft to one name. Ji-sung Park, 28, freelance accountant, no criminal record, no affiliations, nobody. She almost felt sorry about it. Almost. Across the city, Ji-sung was still at his desk at 11 p.m., surrounded by receipts, cold ramyeon, and the quiet devastation of a man trying to save someone else's numbers. He had discovered the discrepancy 3 weeks ago. Someone had used his credentials, his digital signature, his identity, to move money he'd never touched. He'd reported it to his supervisor. His supervisor had disappeared 2 days later. Ji-sung pressed 2 fingers to his temple, staring at his screen. The numbers didn't lie, but whoever had framed him had made sure the lies wore his face. He didn't know yet that the most dangerous woman in the underworld had already booked the room above his office. He didn't know she was already reading his file. And he had no idea that a child, the building's young night shift errand boy, was about to slip a folded note under his door that would change both their lives. The note had no signature, just 6 words, written in shaking handwriting. "They know where you are. Run." Ji-sung read it twice, then a third time. His ramyeon went cold. His screen flickered. Outside his window, a black SUV sat parked where no car had been an hour ago. His stomach dropped. He grabbed his hard drive, the one containing every transaction record, every flag discrepancy, and every breadcrumb proving someone had stolen his identity to move Moreau Syndicate money, and shoved it into his jacket. He was halfway to the stairwell when the door exploded inward. 2 men, suits, earpieces, hers. Ji-sung didn't fight. He wasn't built for fighting. He raised both hands, hard drive pressed against his ribs, and said the only thing that made sense. "I know who actually moved the money, and I can prove it." Silence. Then a voice from the doorway, low, accented, terrifyingly calm. "Then you have exactly 4 minutes to convince me not to disappear you." Elsie stepped into the light. Ji-sung had imagined many things about the person hunting him. He had not imagined her. The stillness, the scar, the way she looked at him like he was an equation she hadn't solved yet. He met her eyes. He didn't flinch. That surprised her. Men twice his size had flinched. "Someone used my credentials," he said, voice steady despite everything. "Someone inside your organization, not outside it. I've been trying to report it for 3 weeks. My supervisor vanished. I think I'm next." Elsie studied him for a long moment. "Show me the drive," she said. He held it out without hesitation. She took it. Their fingers didn't touch. But something shifted in the room anyway, quiet and irreversible, like the first fracture in thick ice. Elsie didn't trust him. Trust was a luxury she'd buried beside her mother at 19. She had her people sweep the drive in a secured suite upstairs, while Ji-sung sat across from her, hands on the table, untied, which was already more courtesy than she showed most people. "You're not scared," she said. "I'm terrified," he replied. "Oh, but being terrified won't help the numbers make sense." She almost smiled. Almost. The drive results came back in 40 minutes. Her analyst, a woman named Yan who had never been wrong, placed the report in front of Elsie without a word. Elsie read it once, then again. The transfers had originated from inside her Seoul operations office. The credentials were Ji-sung's, yes, but the biometric confirmation had been faked. Someone had replicated his digital fingerprint using a spoofing tool that cost more than Ji-sung's entire annual income. This man hadn't stolen anything. He'd been painted. She looked up at him. Who else knows about this? Nobody who's still answering their phone, he said quietly. Something moved behind her eyes. She crushed it immediately. You'll stay here tonight, she said, standing. Don't touch anything. Don't call anyone. Am I a prisoner? She paused at the door. You're alive, she said. Tonight, that's better than most options available to you. She left before he could respond. In the corridor, she stood still for 3 seconds, which for Elsie Moreau was the equivalent of falling apart. Someone inside her syndicate had framed an innocent man and nearly let her execute him for it. The betrayal wasn't just operational, it was personal. By morning, everything had changed. Jan brought Elsie a second report at 5 a.m. The spoofing tool used to clone Ji-sung's credentials had been purchased through a shell account. The shell account traced back to her own deputy, a man named Cho. The same Cho she'd originally sent people to find. Cho wasn't skimming from her. Cho was replacing her. He'd moved $40 million into accounts that would vest to him the moment Elsie was removed. Ji-sung's framing was just a distraction, a way to keep her focused on the wrong target while Cho quietly assembled what he needed. She sat with that information for 60 seconds. Then she walked back to Ji-sung's room. He was awake. Sitting on the floor, actually, back against the bed, notebook in his lap. Writing. Not panicking. Writing. She stopped in the doorway. What are you doing? Reconstructing the transfer sequence from memory, he said, not looking up. I work better on paper. If you're going to find who did this, you'll need the full chain, not just the endpoints. She stared at him. You're helping me. You didn't disappear me, he said simply. That feels like a partnership. Against every instinct she owned, Elsie sat down on the floor across from him. He slid the notebook toward her without being asked. She looked at the pages, clean columns, flagged anomalies, margin notes in small, precise handwriting. It was the most organized evidence reconstruction she'd ever seen, and he'd done it from memory on hotel stationery overnight. You're good at this, she said. Numbers don't lie, he replied. People do. She looked at him then. Really looked. How long have you known someone was setting you up? 3 weeks. A beat. How long have you known someone was setting you up? The silence between them was long and electric. Since 5 this morning, she admitted. It was the most honest thing she'd said to anyone in years. They worked through the morning. Ji-sung walked her through every transaction, every redirect, every ghost invoice. Elsie cross-referenced with Jan remotely. By noon, the picture was complete and brutal. Cho had been building his coup for 8 months. Ji-sung had stumbled onto the edge of it purely by accident. An outside accountant hired to audit a subsidiary who'd noticed one number that didn't belong. One number. That's all it had taken. You reported it, Elsie said, knowing it could get you killed. I didn't know that part then, he paused. I just knew it was wrong. Most people look away. My father didn't, Ji-sung said quietly. She waited. He looked at the ceiling. He was a records clerk, found evidence of corruption inside a construction company, reported it properly through every legal channel. A long pause. They destroyed him anyway, lost his job, his reputation, took 4 years and everything we had. He exhaled slowly. But he never said it was a mistake. He said, Ji-sung, a number is just a number until a person decides what it means. Elsie said nothing for a moment. Is he still alive? Yes, he teaches bookkeeping to teenagers in Incheon now. A small, genuine smile crossed his face. The first real one she'd seen. He loves it. Something cracked quietly inside Elsie's chest. She thought about her own father, a man who'd handed her a syndicate at 19 and a single instruction. Trust nobody. She'd followed that instruction for 15 years. She looked at Ji-sung, this nobody accountant with hotel stationery and an inherited conscience, and felt something she hadn't felt since before her mother died. She felt ashamed of the person she'd nearly been tonight. They ate late that afternoon, room service, simple food. The kind of meal that has no agenda. Ji-sung ate like a man who hadn't stopped moving in days, which he hadn't. Elsie ate like someone remembering that food exists for reasons other than fuel. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask." "Do you actually enjoy it? Running all of this?" She set down her chopsticks. Nobody asked her that. Ever. "I'm good at it," she said carefully. "That's not what I asked." She looked at him. "You're very comfortable asking dangerous questions." "You're very comfortable not answering them," he replied without malice. A beat. Then another. "No," she said finally quietly. "I don't enjoy it. I survive it." He nodded slowly like that answer made complete sense to him. "My father used to say the saddest people in the world are the ones who are excellent at the wrong thing." The words landed somewhere deep and undefended. She looked away first. Out the window, at Seoul spread below them, glittering and indifferent. She had controlled pieces of this city for years and never once felt like she belonged to it. "You should sleep," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "We move on Cho tonight." "Will you sleep?" "I don't really—" She stopped. "Sleep?" he finished. "Yes." He pushed the second pillow toward her side of the table, a small, absurd, completely earnest gesture. "Try," he said. "Even 30 minutes. You'll think better." She didn't move for a long moment. Then, for the first time and longer than she could remember, Elsie Moreau did exactly what someone told her to. It happened at 9 p.m. Cho moved first, faster than she'd anticipated. He'd known his cover was blown the moment Elsie's team went quiet. He had a contingency. Of course he did. His people grabbed Ji-sung from the hotel corridor in the 3-minute window between Elsie's security rotations. 3 minutes. That's all it took. Elsie came out of the operations room to find the corridor empty and Ji-sung's notebook on the floor. Dropped, not placed. A signal or just chaos? Either way, her stomach dropped in a way it had no business dropping. Her deputy brought intel within minutes. Cho had Ji-sung in a warehouse in Mapo. He was sending one message: back down or the accountant dies. Her senior lieutenant, a man named Ro, put it plainly. "He's nobody, boss. Cut the loss. We hit Cho from another angle." Elsie looked at the notebook on the floor. One number. That's all it had taken for Ji-sung to sound the alarm, knowing the cost, knowing the risk, choosing right anyway. "Get the cars," she said. "Boss?" "Now, Ro." She picked up the notebook herself. A small act. Private. She tucked it inside her jacket like it was something worth protecting. Because it was. In the warehouse, Cho's man leaned close to Ji-sung and said, "She's not coming. People like her don't come for people like you." Ji-sung said nothing. He was thinking about a woman who had sat on a hotel floor and admitted quietly that she was just surviving. He thought she might come. He was right. Elsie hit the warehouse at 10:43 p.m. with 6 people and no patience. Cho hadn't expected speed. He'd expected negotiation, the political, careful maneuvering of syndicate leadership. He'd forgotten what Elsie was before she became leadership. She was the one they sent when negotiation was already over. It was over quickly. Cho's people folded. Cho himself tried to run and made it approximately 12 meters. But the moment that mattered happened before all of it. When Elsie came through the warehouse door and saw Ji-sung, zip-tied to a chair, one eye swollen, still upright, still calm, she crossed the room without stopping, without speaking, and cut the ties herself. He looked up at her. "I knew you'd come," he said. "Don't," she said, her voice rough. "Don't what?" "Don't make it something it isn't." He studied her face. "What is it then?" She didn't answer. She pulled him to his feet. Her hand stayed on his arm 1 second longer than necessary. He noticed. He didn't say anything. Outside, now with Cho secured and her people handling the aftermath, Elsie stood apart in the cold night air. Ji-sung came and stood beside her. Not close enough to crowd her, just close enough to exist in the same space. "What happens now?" he asked. "You give full testimony. Evidence goes to the right people. You're cleared completely." "And you?" A long pause. "I have decisions to make," she said. "About the syndicate?" "About everything." He turned to look at her profile. Sharp jaw, old scar, eyes that had seen too much carrying something new and terrified and alive. "Your father's instruction," he said quietly. "Trust nobody." She went still. "How did you—" "You said it in your sleep," he said gently. "This afternoon. 30 minutes." The silence was long and full, and neither of them broke it. 3 months later, Seoul was still Seoul. Loud, luminous, moving fast. But some things had changed. Cho's network had been dismantled quietly, efficiently, the evidence delivered through channels that didn't require Elsie's name on any document. Ji-sung's name had been cleared completely, every fraudulent transaction reversed, his professional record restored without a single asterisk. His father had called crying. Ji-sung had sat on his apartment floor and cried too, the kind of crying that is just relief, finally finding an exit. Elsie had restructured, not disappeared. She was not a woman who disappeared, but restructured. Pulled back from 3 operations, handed off 2 territories to people she'd verified and tested herself. She was not done with the world she ran, but she was no longer only that world. She called him on a Tuesday, no explanation, no preamble. My father's instruction," she said. "I've been following it since I was 19. "I know," Ji-sung said. "I think it kept me alive." "I think it kept you alone," he said gently. A long pause. "Yes," she admitted. "Both." She was in Incheon. She didn't tell him that. She'd gone to find his father's bookkeeping class. Not to recruit anyone, not for any operational reason. Just to see the place that had produced a man who found one wrong number and refused to look away. The classroom smelled like chalk and old paper. His father had his son's eyes. When she left, she sat in her car for a long time. Then she drove to Ji-sung's apartment. Knocked once. He opened the door and looked at her. This terrifying, complicated, quietly breaking woman on his doorstep. And didn't say, "What are you doing here?" or "This is unexpected." He just stepped aside. She walked in. He handed her a notebook. New, spiral-bound, empty. "For the next chapter," he said simply. She looked at it for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 15 years, Elsie Moreau smiled. Not the controlled kind, not the weaponized kind. The real, undefended, slightly terrified kind. "Your father was right," she said quietly. "About which part?" "A number is just a number," she said, "until a person decides what it means." He smiled back. Outside, Seoul kept moving. Loud, luminous, indifferent. Inside, something that had no name yet was just beginning. If this story moved you, even a little, drop a comment below. Would you have trusted her the way Ji-sung did? And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next story.